It's 11 on a Wednesday and nothing is wrong. You have things. A life that, if you wrote it out, would look fine on paper, maybe even good. And somehow you're sitting in it feeling completely hollow. Not sad, just absent. Like someone turned the volume down on everything and forgot to turn it back up. You've probably already tried to explain it to yourself. Told yourself you're ungrateful, that people have real problems, that you have no reason to feel this way, so you shouldn't, so you'll just wait it out. And then Thursday comes and you're still in it. And the waiting didn't do anything. And now you also feel guilty about the waiting. The guilt is part of it. That guilt, the one that shows up specifically because your life is objectively okay, is actually one of the most important clues about what's happening. So, is the fact that you can't find a reason for it. Because the emptiness isn't coming from the outside. It's coming from the inside, from a system that was built to feel things in a very specific way. And something in that system has quietly stopped working the way you expected. Here's where it starts. Wolfram Schultz is a neuroscientist who spent years in the 1990s studying dopamine, not as the pleasure chemical, which is how most people have heard it described, but as the anticipation chemical. What his research found, working with primate brain studies published in 1997, is that dopamine doesn't spike when a reward arrives. It spikes when the brain predicts one is coming. The pursuit, the approach, the almost there, that's where the neurological activation lives. When the reward actually arrives, the spike drops back to baseline, sometimes below it. Think about what that means for anything you work toward. The promotion, the apartment, the relationship that finally looked like what you wanted. While you were getting there, your brain was lit up. The dopamine was doing its job, driving you forward, making the goal feel vivid and urgent and worth it. And then you arrived. And within days, maybe weeks, the feeling flattened. Not because the thing was wrong, because the system that was generating the feeling runs on movement, not arrival. This is a documented psychological pattern. Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell introduced it formally in 1971 and called it hedonic adaptation, the brain's tendency to return to a relatively stable emotional baseline no matter what changes in your external circumstances. Brickman tested this directly in 1978. He studied lottery winners and found they were not significantly happier long-term than people who'd won nothing. The windfall happened. The baseline came back. The system adapted. You are not ungrateful. Your brain adapted. Those are not the same thing. And here's where it compounds. Because the adaptation doesn't announce itself. It happens in the background, quietly, while you're still going through the motions of a life that looks correct from the outside. Someone on Quora described it with exact precision. They go through their day like a normal person, eat, sleep, routine, and still feel empty. Another said, it feels like watching your own life through glass. You're present in the sense that you're physically there. You're absent in the sense that nothing is landing. The psychologist's term for this is anhedonia, defined in the DSM-5 as a reduced ability to feel pleasure in normally enjoyable activities. It doesn't require a diagnosis to recognize. And it doesn't require something terrible to have happened. It's the system that processes reward becoming quieter, less responsive, not because the reward stopped, but because the gap between what the brain predicted and what it received narrowed to nothing. When you've already arrived, there's nowhere left for the anticipation to go. Daniel Kahneman and Angus Dayton published research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2010 looking at income and emotional well-being. Their finding was specific. Emotional well-being increased with income up to a point, around $75,000 a year in the US context of that time. And then the day-to-day happiness gains leveled off even as circumstances continued to improve. More recent work by Matthew Killingsworth in 2021, also in NAS, complicated that picture slightly. But the underlying mechanism stayed consistent. External conditions, past a certain threshold, don't keep scaling with internal experience. The brain adjusts its baseline, and the new circumstances become normal. And normal doesn't feel like anything. This is where the social piece enters. And it's the part most people don't connect to the emptiness until they're deep enough in it to look back. A meta-analysis led by Julianne Holt-Lundstad published in PLOS Medicine in 2015 and covering hundreds of studies across millions of people, found that loneliness, social isolation, and living alone are associated with roughly a 26% increased risk of early mortality. The U.S. Surgeon General issued an advisory on this in 2023, describing loneliness as a public health crisis. Nearly 1 in 2 adults reporting feelings of loneliness, not in people with objectively bad lives, in the general population, including people who are busy, who have relationships, who have exactly the kind of life that's supposed to feel like enough. Because the feeling of disconnection and the fact of connection are not the same thing. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like you're watching from behind something. That sensation, the glass between you and your own life, isn't about the quantity of relationships around you. It's about whether the connections you have are feeding the part of you that needs to feel genuinely seen. And when they're not, the brain registers a gap. A quiet, persistent signal that something is missing that it cannot name. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and wrote about it in Man's Search for Meaning, made the distinction that shapes all of this. Pleasure and meaning are not the same thing. His central argument was that what humans require is not the absence of suffering or the presence of good circumstances. It's a sense that what they're doing matters, that there is a reason for it. Without that, even a comfortable life produces what he described as an existential vacuum. A hollow at the center. The hollow you feel at 11 on a Wednesday isn't dramatic, and it doesn't have a clean edge. That's part of what makes it so disorienting. It doesn't feel like grief, which has shape and direction. It doesn't feel like anxiety, which at least has momentum. It's the absence of those things, a flatness where feeling used to be. And the loop that keeps it running is specific. The brain adapted to the good circumstances. The anticipation system quieted because there's nothing left to anticipate. The connections around you are real, but not landing in the way that the part of you that needs meaning can access. So you go through the day, you do the things, you wait for something to shift. And the waiting becomes its own routine, which the brain adapts to as well, and now even the waiting feels flat. One thing that research on emotional numbness identifies consistently is that it's a transdiagnostic experience. It shows up across depression, burnout, and what clinical psychology calls existential distress, without requiring any of those labels specifically. A survey from 2023 found that 22% of employees in the United States rated their current burnout level as high or very high. That's not a fringe experience. That's 1 in 5 people in any given workplace running on a system that has quietly stopped generating the internal signal that makes effort feel worth it. The 22% survey burnout rate. The near 1 in 2 adults reporting loneliness. These are people with full lives. Calendars, relationships, responsibilities. Externally fine. Internally somewhere slightly outside themselves. The pattern doesn't stay abstract. It shows up in very specific daily moments. You get good news and notice that the response your body produces is smaller than you expected. You're with people you like and feel like you're performing being present rather than actually being there. You finish something you worked on and wait for the satisfaction to arrive, and it doesn't. Or it does for about 4 minutes, and then it's gone. You look at your life the way you'd look at a photograph of someone else's. This is a reasonable life, you think. A fine life. And you feel nothing in particular about it. That gap between the life that looks correct and the internal experience that doesn't match it is what the hollow is made of. The adaptation that was supposed to help your brain normalize good circumstances also normalized away the felt sense of them. The anticipation system that was supposed to drive you toward things went quiet once you arrived. And whatever meaning-making structure was supposed to make all of it feel like it added up to something either never fully formed or got buried under the accumulation of things that were supposed to be enough. The emptiness at 11 on a Wednesday isn't irrational. It's a completely logical output of systems running exactly as they were built. A reward system that lives in pursuit. An adaptation mechanism that erases the texture of what it normalizes. A social brain that measures connection not by its presence, but by its depth. And a meaning-making capacity that no amount of external circumstance can substitute for. That capacity doesn't switch back on, because things improve. The things already improved. The system needs something different, something the circumstances were never going to provide on their own. And that's the part that nobody in the middle of a fine Wednesday night has fully worked out yet.